Hello and welcome to your Rangers Review evening briefing. I'm Chris Jack in the hosting chair for a change, and Josh is in a chair in an Athens hotel. Josh, how are we? How's your day been?
Good, as comfortable as you, hopefully. Sorry to people we're a bit late, but we're at the mercy of delays and all the usual travel complications, Chris. But it has been, fine, pretty straightforward trip. Looking forward to the game, to be honest. I know we're building up to a little bit early, but we're just going to jump on quickly, a little bit more Rangers chat, which I'm sure people never mind. And it's going to be a big game. I think Rangers have 2 games before the end of the week that it's not going to make up for the difficulties of the last month before the last international break. But as we'll maybe discuss kind of over the next 20 minutes or so, I do think there is some things that Philippe Clement could do to improve the optics heading into the next international break. And it's going to be a tough test over here, but you probably, weirdly enough, Chris, don't know about you, but you're probably a little bit more confident with Rangers going to a place like Olympiacos than you are when they go to, I don't know, Tavernier Rugby Park, in all honesty.
How was there many Rangers fans on your journey out? A chance to kind of gauge the mood of the travelling fans? I know a lot will probably head out tomorrow ahead of the game on Thursday. Any advanced players that you've managed to kind of gauge their optimism levels?
Yeah, a fair few who always Rangers will always take people away, even if they're the recent away trips, certainly domestically, haven't been great. But listen, I think that the second half against Motherwell was better from a performance point of view. I still don't think overall, Chris, the game was wasn't a line in the sand moment. Was it? We were sitting next to one another at the game, and I don't think you came away from that thinking, "Wow, you can see definitively that things are going to change." The way that the optics changed for me is personnel, and we saw this a little bit over the course of the summer. I'm not just talking about individuals on the basis of performance, but what that represents. And because Rangers ended that game with a stronger starting 11, Danilo and Sterling, who we spoke about yesterday in the morning briefing. I actually hadn't realised that Danilo, and it's because he uploaded the compilation to his Instagram story, which included that run he made for the second goal. I hadn't realised it was actually his. He kind of linked the play in the first instance by taking the ball in his chest and then making up the ground. Even in those 2 actions, I think, as well as the chance he created for Tierney, you just saw that I think Rangers are a better team. Bessers will still score goals, I think, over the course of the season, and it's not to take away from the good moments he's had, but we know what he's not at this point in his Rangers career, Chris, and I think Danilo will make Rangers a better football team overall, bring players into play. And also Dujon Sterling, again, spoke about that to death somewhat yesterday with him replacing James Tavernier. If you look at this summer for Rangers, a rebuild of sorts, more of a rebuild than the summer before, but arguably the starting 11 hasn't quite mirrored that significantly with the players that Philippe Clement has chosen. I'm really interested to see over the course of this week, obviously Danilo isn't in the European squad, but will he have looked at that second half and thought, do you know what? I've heard the reaction of fans. It's not to say that Tavernier and Dessers aren't going to play a part over the course of the season. Of course not. That would be ridiculous. But it is to say that you maybe take them into the firing line a little bit at the moment, and you maybe not even give the fans what they want to a degree. But is your logic stronger than your loyalty? Are you going to look at what the likes of Sterling and Danilo have done and reward them with places? Because I don't think Clement's subs, I think, helped change the game against Motherwell. I don't think we've seen enough of that from him over the course at Rangers so far. So I'm really intrigued to see his 2 starting 11s over the course of the remainder of the week and what that says about what he's maybe learned from that Motherwell game.
I think that point ties into 2 pieces that we've got on the site, one that's live there just now and one that we've compiled for tomorrow morning. We'll touch on the first one that's there just now. First, Derek has also spoken to Olympiacos podcaster. You can watch that full interview on the YouTube channel. There's also a written version of the Q&A on the site, and really interesting to get a bit more insight into Olympiacos and the best ways to beat them. I didn't realise they had been through as many managerial changes as they have done. I think it's 6 in the last couple of seasons that the guy has kind of outlined in detail there. They also have 6 points from their first couple of games, like Rangers. How big a result would it be, you think, for Rangers if they can go to a place? I dare say there will be a lot of talk. The manager holding his his pre-match press conference about 6 o'clock or so UK time tomorrow night. There will be a lot of talk about the atmosphere and what Rangers are stepping into. Perhaps members of the squad have shown that they can handle that in previous campaigns. But the manager has mentioned a lot about this being a new version of this group. They still have a lot to prove in terms of, can they handle big European nights on the back of big domestic games? Can they handle big domestic games on the back of big European nights? That's just a challenge that they have to get through. On the back of a good performance and result in Malmo, on the back of a good result and performance against Bucharest, where would a result in against Olympiacos on Thursday night rank for you?
Definitely more difficult, isn't it? Because they obviously won the Conference League and they've got quite a famed atmosphere here just outside of Athens. But if you look at that Malmo game, I can't think off the top of my head of a better performance Rangers have had this season. Now, they weren't incredible at Malmo, but they were good. They should have scored more goals. They conceded very little in terms of opportunity. I don't think Malmo had a good night. The early goal helped Rangers because it definitely, having been there that night, takes a sting out of the home crowd and increases the impetus on Malmo to be a little bit rushed and maybe a little bit chaotic in elements of their play. But what helped Rangers that night was Malmo pressed them, similar to the game against Bucharest a couple of Thursdays ago. If you look at the build up to Czerny's goal, which was his second goal, which was the third goal on the night, wasn't it? You look at the space that he's in after Rangers are pressed from a goal kick. You just don't get that domestically. And I realise I'm not making a particularly enlightening tactical point here, but Rangers for about 6 to 7 years have looked at a better side when they're playing in a mid-block, even if it's against a more difficult opponent, than when a team sits in and asks them questions and then attacks them directly. The first half against Motherwell showed that. Now, I don't think Rangers helped themselves with their team selection because, as we discussed in the morning briefing on Monday with Johnny and Derek, you look at that Rangers starting 11, and outside of Chefty maybe being able to sprint beyond his man at pace, it's a really predictable Rangers team. You know that Czerny always wants to cut inside in his left foot. Barami the same. Lawrence, I think Andy Halliday was speaking about this on Clyde Super Scoreboard. Was it Super Scoreboard? I think it was Clyde Super Scoreboard. And he was effectively saying that maybe what you don't see with Diomande is that he varies his game a lot and he's a more difficult opponent effectively to read, than he was referencing how the substitutions changed the game as well. So maybe Rangers in the first half weren't best suited to break down a team, but I thought it was all very much in front of Motherwell. The big chance of the half, which fell to Cyril Dessers and he missed on his left foot, that derived not necessarily off of a clever pass or a particularly good passage of play, but off a shot that the keeper saved and was a bit of a chaotic moment. Now, Rangers did go and score that goal at the start of the second half that was better, with the cutback from Barron to Dessers, but we've rarely seen that at all this season. Over the past couple of weeks, we've spoken a lot about Rangers' chance creation numbers and why they're more than slightly worrying. It's not as if they're really underperforming the chances that they've created against these teams who sit in. So all that to say, Chris, I think if they're able to do something on Thursday night, then it would be significant. And by the time the game comes around, it will be big. Rangers are in a financial situation, obviously, looking at the most recent accounts, where any result in European competition cannot be turned down. And also, if they are to get another positive result, it puts them in a really good opportunity to actually progress out of this new Europa League group format as well. So it's going to be difficult from an environment sense, from an atmosphere sense. But again, these games have tended to suit Rangers a little bit better because it's not so much about breaking teams down. You're going to be pressed. I'm interested to see what they do. As mentioned, team in terms of their starting 11 will Clement go back to James Tavernier. You presume that Cyril Dessers will start up top. But that worked fine in Malmo because Rangers had space to play into. They struggled to, I think, play into the feet of Dessers when a team's sitting back and he's not able to link the game like Danilo. So maybe as difficult as it's going to be, that the tactical setup suits them a little bit better, especially because they know if they get a decent result, they're going to be in a really good position. But yeah, a lot, I think, rests on who they put in that starting 11 and whether they can, like they did in Malmo, start the game really aggressively and quiet. What's going to be a noisier home crowd here than it was there.
I have a couple of comments to get through. World's greatest DJ joining us as always. Great to have your company on the show. Phil is tuned into Derek's interview, and I think that similarity to Rangers struck me as well. It's like, how are they going to compare in terms of styles? Is this going to be a game that suits Rangers? Is it going to be a game where they do find themselves with those opportunities to go and actually hurt Olympiacos? Jamie is confident that Rangers might get a result. I think we joked the other day it would be no surprise for Rangers to get a result on Thursday night and then be absolutely terrible against Hearts at the weekend. That's just the inconsistency of this side, and just in terms of the atmosphere. Curry Muncher there saying if they can handle the booing at Ibrox, they should be able to handle any ground. There has been a bit of that so far this season.
Chris, they can't handle the booing. That's the issue, isn't it? They can't. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but it will be a difficult atmosphere, I'm sure. And to a comment that was made slightly earlier, I think that, listen, regardless of Olympiacos' approach, Clement doesn't really sit in away from home. If you think of Benfica away, if you think of Real Betis away, and he spoke about this previously when he's been in charge of Club Brugge and they've went away to Real Madrid. I think they got a draw with Club Brugge at Real Madrid, was close to result at Old Trafford as well. I expect it to be a very similar performance from his team. I'd like to see the midfield be Diomande, Raskin and Barron if it's more of a 4-3-3 as opposed to Diomande playing in the number 10 position. Still missing a winger in that team, an out-and-out winger maybe, because Cherney likes to move inside the pitch, but that's nothing new to suggest that. But I don't think Rangers' approach will change that much. Again, if you saw what they did in Malmo, was about trying to provoke Malmo onto them to then play over the top and play quickly. And with Barami playing a couple of passes through that night, I think Cherney missed a good opportunity one-on-one, didn't he? But I expect that Clement will obviously hear from him tomorrow, and we'll have full coverage of that. But I expect Clement's approach in European games will be very much the same as it has been so far.
Just before we touch on the big selection point for me, the big call the manager has to make. Peggy asking how are conditions back at base here? It's cold and very typically Scottish. Do you have your shorts in your suitcase with you? Is it nice and balmy over there?
Well, I didn't bring a big jacket, as everyone will know. Greece in November is a difficult climate to pack for.
Difficult one to pack for.
It is. So it was a bit breezy when we got out of the airport. So it's not going to be too hot. To Peggy's comment, I don't think you can expect that to be used as a complaint. So slightly warmer than back home, but I maybe have overestimated the Greek sun in November.
Just in terms of, I mentioned there for me the big selection call that the manager has to make, one that he chose not to really get into when he spoke post-match on Sunday. He was asked about James Tavernier's performance and his form, chose not to go into it, didn't want to get involved. I dare say it will come up. If it doesn't come up tomorrow night, it will come up at some point over the next few weeks. James Tavernier is always a talking point. As I mentioned earlier on, we have a piece on the site in the morning looking at why it's not quite as easy as people saying, well, you just take Tav out and you put Sterling in and everything will tick along nicely. It's not quite as simple as that. There's a lot of nuance to the situation. I know you're a big fan of John Sterling and what he can bring to the side. One, do you think his long-term future is at right back? And two, is his short-term future going to be at right back, given that James Tavernier is still at the football club and still clearly someone that the manager has a bit of faith in?
On question one, definitely. And I think people at Rangers also believe that they have to become a buying and selling club. And Dujon Sterling, if you look at his age and his profile and the fact that he's been a very highly rated young player in the past at Chelsea, where he made his debut, I think, at the age of 17. His highest ceiling should be at right back. He can play in midfield, and he's done well there at different points. And he's, I think, done a lot of sacrificial work for Rangers last year. He's now someone who's 24, going on 25. He's in the leadership group, a newish leadership group, or with new members of that leadership group in the Rangers dressing room as of this season. And he's, while not maybe quite a senior player, he's definitely in that bracket now. He's not a young player who's still trying to find his way in the game. And on question two, Chris, I think it's interesting because we've spoke about it over the past couple of months and almost said, look, I think you decrease the pressure on James Tavernier by taking him out of the team. I agree with you. I think he looks like he's playing with the weight of the world on his shoulders at the moment. And there's aspects of that I don't think are his fault. It was rare to see him being taken off in a game where Rangers were chasing a goal. I can't remember that happening ever. He's also only scored one goal this season, which was a penalty against Dundee. The opportunity he missed at Hampden at the weekend against Motherwell was pretty uncharacteristic, especially when you think back to this time last year. Clement's just in a job. Tavernier's in good form, and he scored 2 goals in the semi-final of this competition, and obviously the winning goal in the final of this competition against Aberdeen. And that was very much a confirmation of there he is again, providing big moments in big games. You can't ignore the negatives, though. You can't ignore his form from March to May. Part of that is because the load on him has been too heavy. Yes, all the more reason, I think, to rotate him. You also can't ignore, I think this is the main point for me, Chris, when Rangers go back to Hampden in a month's time and they're going to play Celtic, and they're already underdogs because they've not won a big game in the Old Firm for, I can't remember how long it is now, but we seem to do that piece every single year, don't we? And it's probably 3 years, aside from that Scottish Cup game. In the league, certainly, it's about 3 years now. Who do you want to face Diaz Almeida at right back, and who do you want up top? I'd say Dujon Sterling and Danilo to be the one in place of Cyril Dessers. I think we've seen the movie before where Rangers can't get up the pitch because Dessers isn't really a hold-up player. Danilo maybe isn't a hold-up player, but he's certainly someone who can link the game and is more comfortable dropping into the space in front of the defence. And Sterling is a better defender than Tavernier. You've also got to remember that Sterling hasn't proven that he can play 50, 60 games and start them. He's overcome an injury issue that disrupted the month of October. I just think it's set up perfectly, especially with Cass and Weirshall now looking more likely to play at centre-half. And Rangers probably need them there because Robin Proper's taken a bit of time to get up to speed, and there's been a few issues with him in certain domestic fixtures. I think that's set up for Tavernier and Sterling to almost split the minutes, keep both players fresh. Tavernier still then has a part to play throughout the course of the season. But as we saw against Lyon recently, Chris, where I thought he really struggled defensively, that backline needs pace. Dujon Sterling is in the prime years of his career. He's a sellable asset. Play him. And again, still use Tavernier in certain games at certain points. Allow him to still be an important player before the end of the season because he is going to be here. But we've seen the alternative, especially in Old Firm games. That's what I keep coming back to when I think about this question. When you're looking at that game in December, I think if you go with a team that has the likes of Sterling at right back and Cass and Weirshall at centre back, if Danilo's fully fit, if you maybe can move Bayrami into the number 10 position, or if you can play Diomande, Raskin and Barron. So many Old Firm games you've watched in recent years, Rangers haven't been able to cope with Celtic on a physical level. They've just been slower. Celtic, especially in attack, have had much more in terms of durability and energy. If you're to mirror the team with what I've just said there, the likes of Sterling, Cass and Weirshall, Raskin, Barron, I think you start to compete on that level, and that gives you a better opportunity of getting a result.
As always, plenty of talking points, plenty to discuss. What's your movements for tomorrow? Just before we finish up, obviously Olympiacos on mid-afternoon, and then Rangers, they're training at the training ground in the morning, and then obviously flying out. So about 8 o'clock or so, your time for the manager and player tomorrow.
Yes, it is. So we'll have full cover. We'll be live at some point as well, either before the Rangers press conference or after from the stadium, which is a little bit outside of Athens, and I'll be on with, I think, Derek and Stevie in the morning. We're going to talk a bit about kind of that topic. What is Rangers' strongest starting 11? Are we going to be able to see it before the end of the year, and get through some questions hopefully as well? So busy day tomorrow, but yeah, full coverage of it all across the YouTube and the website, and just a reminder to people to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you've not done so for free.
And on that shameless plug, we shall leave you there for the evening. Josh, go and enjoy your night. Go and get yourself a beer after a long day of travelling, and we can reconvene at some point tomorrow, no doubt. Everyone, thanks for your company as always, and we'll see you again tomorrow.